now entering the truth zone, deep into the vortex of the information revolution with your host, Michael B.
This is the Truth Zone, and I am your host, Michael B., coming to you live from North Dallas, Texas, on this beautiful Wednesday, July 12th, 2017. Yesterday, I talked about America's shadow government. Today is going to be more of the international flavor. One of the topics or ideologies that the left likes to push on us in the name of love and coexistence is multiculturalism. And today on the Truth Zone, I'm going to break it down that really multiculturalism is societal suicide. And I really wanted to play this clip on Venezuela, but a lot of it was in Spanish, and when you see the video, you get the subtitles. Well, that's great, but when you're doing audio, it's very difficult. Now, in the beginning of that, Americans were asked, do you like socialism? And I don't even think that people know what socialism really is. And they say, yeah, it's great. I think Americans really want socialism. Well, this past election cycle said differently. No, we don't want socialism. Now, people, the ones that love socialism, bash capitalism and they hold up oligarchy signs and all of that good stuff. Well, an oligarchy has nothing to do with a free market capitalist society. When America first began, you could absolutely come into the country from any background, learn the English language, open up a business. You want it to be a bakery? You're a bakery. You want it to be a blacksmith? You're a blacksmith. And then, of course, I think that, of course, there was some fraud, and some people screwed other people over, and then it became a good idea for the government to protect the consumer, and absolutely. But you see, that opened the door to regulations. And then it opened the door for the ultra-rich to lobby for certain regulations that would blow out local competition. That becomes crony capitalism, which is not a free and open market society. No, it's collusion between the government and the people that can pay them. And then that turns into what I like to say is quasi-socialism. It gets us moving into that direction. And then it becomes totalitarianism, which really is what socialism is. Now, Muammar Gaddafi, he did it a little bit differently in Libya. He didn't keep the money. He actually gave it back to the people. He refused a central bank. He was creating a gold system, and the oligarchs that are running everything through Hillary Clinton's State Department and Barack Obama's presidency killed him. And Libya is in shambles. And one of the things taking place in Libya, and we're going to have a clip on that later on, is the African slave trade. See, the American left likes to still talk about 19th century slavery in America, which, by the way, it was the Republican Party, and it was Republican Christians, really, that forced the ending of slavery here in America. But they won't talk about that, and they don't want to talk about slavery in 2017. And all of that is because when you allow despotism through socialism, communism, those are just distracting buzzwords to the word that I just gave you, totalitarianism. And it creates two classes of people. And this is what's happening in Venezuela. The ultra-rich and the dirt poor. Venezuela had a thriving middle class. They are now road warrior. And I've always challenged liberals who love open borders, who love socialism, who want to give aid and comfort to Islam in the name of coexistence. I've always said, well, why don't you go to ground zero in those places and actually see how it's working out? You know, it's easy to live in Greenwich, Connecticut and bitch about capitalism. Which, if you take out Fairfield County from Connecticut, Connecticut implodes. I've been there, I lived there for 9 dreadful years. All right? So, I know what I'm talking about. You want to talk about a two-class system? That's Connecticut. Mired in government regulations, and as far as I'm concerned, a communist governor in Dan Malloy, and the only reason why he won, and he won narrowly, and I voted in that election, and nobody remembers number 2, so I don't remember who I was voting for, but I went to bed, and that man was winning. The union votes were counted in the early morning, and that put Malloy over the top. He immediately rolled in 80 new taxes, and they all attacked herbal medicines, natural supplements, alternative medicines, and alternative therapies to keep us all in that tight establishment box. I believe, and I think this is still true, there are more government jobs in Connecticut than private sector jobs. Extremely high taxation, and again, that's totalitarianism. And why these people want socialism in America is beyond me. They're not looking at what's happening. They are absolutely devoid of any awareness. And I'm going to play this first clip. There's some scripture in it, so there's some space. And again, this is a video broken into an audio. And in the pauses, just keep in mind, it's verses from Romans. And it talks about apathy. It talks about love of unnaturalness, which is really homosexuality. And I'm not going to get into all that today. But it's living a decadent, apathetic, ignorant life. And you're going to hear some compelling testimony. Now, Mark Dice has written books on the Illuminati. He has his own YouTube channel. I think he's over 1 million people now. I would say he's not a regular contributor on the Alex Jones Show, Infowars.com, but he's on regularly. He is. He's not every week, but he's a solid contributor. And he does live interviews in California, and he asks rather absurd questions. And I know that these aren't staged. I've seen enough of Mark Dice's work that these are live and unscripted on the people's part interviews, and they're very troubling. And just remember, folks, these people get to vote, and I hope personally that they skip Election Day. So this is coming out of California. This is very troubling, and again, excuse the pauses. They're pretty brief. There's a few of them, and again, it's going over scripture about straying from nature and being apathetic and decadent. So here we go with the first clip. I call this Oblivion in America. And so this is the part where there's some scripture and you read that. So there's that slight pause. And so I just ask you to bear with me on this. It's really troubling and it's really depressing that there are people walking around the earth. Here we go.
Nuked China last week, or do you think that we should have maybe taken them to the United Nations over their currency manipulation? You think dropping those nuclear weapons over there was the right thing to do?
I don't think so, but I don't really know the situation either. What happened?
Do you want to elaborate on that?
I don't know what happened.
Well, China has been manipulating their currency, and so we went and dropped a nuclear bomb on Shanghai last week in retaliation for that. You think that was inappropriate, or?
I don't think that was right. No, I don't think so. I think they should have just talked it out. Everybody comes together.
Talked it out before dropping the nuke on China last week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like slant eyes.
So it's okay to nuke them then? It was last week or something, was it? Or was it 2 weeks ago? I forget.
About 2 or 3. I don't care.
Hey, real quick, what do you think about China dropping those nuclear bombs on Russia the other day?
Dude, it's bad.
I mean, do you think they should have maybe talked about that, or do you think that they deserve to drop the nuclear bombs over there for what they were doing?
No, they should talk about it first, instead of, because just the whole nukes, it just pollutes everything, and
I can't believe they did that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I don't watch the news.
Yeah, who needs to know about that anyway?
It's depressing.
It's depressing.
Yes. You guys have a good one.
Let them die over there. Thanks. I mean, do you think maybe they should have taken them to the UN before they dropped those nuclear bombs on China last week? Yeah, probably. Did you hear about Russia nuking China last week?
I did not.
What do you think about that? I mean, they dropped...
I say this guy knows more right here. Ask him. I don't know. I gotta go though. Sorry. What's going on?
Well, the prices at Walmart are tripled because of the disruption in the supply chain over the nuclear attack over there.
So that's the reason why Walmart has been complaining about the fact that they have nothing on their shelves anymore.
It's because
they can't even have enough things to sell at Walmart anymore.
I cannot believe, what a moron. Can you please name one Walmart where there's nothing on the shelves? So far there's only one person that at least admitted she doesn't watch the news, it's depressing, and isn't interested. And it's part of that apathy, but at least that was a reasonable answer compared to these people. This is unbelievable. When have you ever seen an empty Walmart? So not only are some of these people uninformed, they make stuff up as they go along. Incredible.
It's because their factories all got nuked last month in the nuclear attack.
How come this stuff isn't disclosed?
That's why the prices at Walmart...
Because it never happened.
I don't go to Walmart.
I just kind of stay away from all that stuff. I ride my bike, I hang out with my friends, I go to the beach. Just try to stay happy. I don't watch the news. Is that weird?
No, so you're a Target shopper instead of Walmart?
Yeah.
The prices at Target, all Chinese goods. But I mean, haven't you noticed that all Chinese goods have doubled in price over the last month over that nuclear war?
No, I'm not part of that part of society that it doesn't affect me. I mean, it does, but it's affected my life. Like, I ride a bike now instead of drive around and work.
But I mean,
It's hard to...
I'm sure that the tires...
So this guy totally contradicts himself. First, and I know people like this. He's on his high horse. Oh, I'm not affected. I'm not part of society. Then, not even, and Mark Dice didn't even ask a follow-up question. The guy just compelled himself to tell the truth, contradicts himself, and says, yeah, I'm totally affected. Instead of having a car, I've got a bike. But I'm trying to be happy. That's this fake euphoria these liberal have. They're really not happy. They're not happy, and they're not liberated. They're actually controlled by their own ignorance and their own apathy. They're controlled. See, people like me, okay, I don't have unlimited income. So, there's certainly some control there. And, sure, there are some laws that maybe control me. I don't really know which ones, because I'm not really compelled to screw over my fellow man. But I'm certainly aware of the world, and certainly I think I'm a positive contributor, and I'm sure most of you in the audience are not in a fake euphoria, which then this guy discloses that he's broke, that society does affect him, but he just wants to go to the beach, and he just wants to hang out. Total apathy. But I'll give him credit. At least he corrected himself. Maybe, and I doubt it, maybe after that interview he would see how, since society has affected him so adversely, what is he willing to do to maybe get himself into a car? But perhaps he just doesn't care.
Come from China, so now the tire factories
They've been $20 for as long as I know, but maybe
they've doubled though because of that nuclear attack, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that a mean thing to do, or should they have tried to talk about that first?
I guess.
Any other thoughts on the nuclear attack that happened in China last month?
Not really.
I like your cup holder.
Thank you.
Have a good day. What do you think about China dropping those nuclear bombs on Russia last week?
Honestly, I wasn't really paying attention. He might know.
Yeah, ask him.
We'll get to you in a second.
I don't know.
What did you hear? What do you think? Should they have dropped those nuclear bombs on Russia?
I don't really know anything about it, to be honest.
You don't follow the news.
They didn't drop nuclear bombs on Russia.
See?
That's the answer we were looking for.
Oh.
So here's another brief interlude, and then Mark Dice is going to go into another subject. And folks, I got to tell you, it's either this one or the next one is so bizarre. Actually, the next two are just so bizarre. I cannot believe that people are actually walking the earth with this mindset. Here's your zombie apocalypse, folks. Because these people are definitely mental zombies. And you would think, listening to this, you would think this would have to be staged. But it really is not staged. And sometimes, a lot of times, really, truth is stranger than fiction. And I just hope you parents out there that are listening to this are doing their due diligence in educating and informing your children of what's going on around the world and prepare them to not conform to this apathy. So here we go.
If we had stricter gun control laws, that Lee Harvey Oswald would not have been able to shoot Jesus, or would he have still used a gun on the black market?
He still would have used the gun.
He still would have been able to get a gun to shoot Jesus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think if we had stricter gun control laws that Jesus would have not been killed?
I don't know. It all depends. If someone wants a gun, they're gonna get it and use it.
But I mean, if there were stricter gun control laws, would Lee Harvey Oswald have gotten the gun that killed Jesus? Do you think? Or do you think that would have prevented him shooting Jesus?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Would that have stopped Lee Harvey Oswald from shooting him, do you think? Because he would have needed a background check to get the gun?
No, I don't think I would have. I think people find ways to get around things.
It would have been on the black market. He would have got a black market gun to shoot Jesus?
Probably.
If we had stricter gun control laws, do you think that Lee Harvey Oswald would not have been able to turn Jesus over to the Romans at gunpoint?
No, because a criminal is going to always find a way to do what he wants to do.
So he would have still got a gun on the black market to hold Jesus up at gunpoint and turn him over to the Romans?
Because criminals will always find a way to do what they have to do to survive.
What year did Jesus die, approximately?
I couldn't tell you.
Just roughly. 1500?
You know, here's what's so bizarre about that series. If they knew reality and they were talking about a present day moment, their answers are actually correct. In that, no matter how much gun control you have, the only ones that are being controlled are honest citizens. If somebody wants to kill someone, and if they want to use a gun as a method, those answers were true. They're going to find a way. But Lee Harvey Oswald shooting Jesus Christ, and not one person questioned Mark Dice on what the heck he was talking about. And then you get Jesus being turned over to the Romans at gunpoint. Amazing.
1200s?
1300s.
1300s? What year approximately did Jesus die?
I have no idea.
Was it like the 1200s, 1300s? Just roughly. No help, no help. This is only you. Just roughly. What year did Jesus die, approximately?
I have no idea.
You could guess.
1300s.
1300s. What year approximately did Jesus die? No help. No help.
Jeez, I don't know.
Roughly. I mean, was it like the 1300s, 1700s?
I'd say 13 or 12 or 13, yeah.
I have no idea.
Just roughly, if you could guess.
Nah, thank you.
No idea?
I don't know.
Guess.
Oh,
No help. No help.
Yeah.
Just approximately what year did he die? Just guess if you don't know.
Something BC. Or I don't know. That was a long time ago.
Was it in the 1700s?
1600s.
Well, at least she got that right. It was a long time ago.
1600s.
Right? Like BC.
Okay.
500 BC? AD? BC?
500 AD or 500 BC? Which is?
Well, die, I'm going to go AD since he died in after death. I don't know.
500 AD.
AD.
After death. Amazing. So I guess we're all after death.
Like the 1100s, 1300s. What year roughly did Jesus die?
I'm bad with dates, so I'm not gonna throw a date out there.
Okay, that's basically the end of that. And like I said, this is not made up. That is actually live, folks. And these are people that are eligible to vote. And these are the same people that love socialism. So I want I want to stay on that subject for a moment, and I want to read an article from the Cato Institute. This is from cato.org. And it's called Socialist Catastrophe in Venezuela. This is from David Boaz, May 30th, 2017, where he writes, journalists are now reporting regularly on the crisis in Venezuela, with shortages of everything from toilet paper to food, and now daily street protests. What the news reports too often miss is why. Why is a formerly middle-class, oil-rich country, they're not just an oil-rich country. Folks, they have the largest oil reserves in the world. So, why is Venezuela desperately poor? But let me make this clear. Venezuela is not poor. The people are. The oligarchs, the elitists, they're loaded. I've seen videos this morning where they've got all the top stores, Tiffany's, Louis Vuitton, and others I never even heard of. And those people, through local mafias, excuse me, they grab the food first off of the shelves, and they leave scraps for the rest of the people. People wait in line. They have assigned days when they can line up for food. And they've got to sleep on those lines the night before just to have a shot at a can of milk. No lie. These people are passing out in the streets from starvation. A country with the biggest oil reserves in the world. The Weekly Standard notes a New York Times article how Venezuela stumbled to the brink of collapse. They used 1,800 words on the country's collapse into authoritarianism. The Standard summarizes. The strongman Hugo Chavez ran for president in 1998. His populist message of returning power to the people won him victory. Chavez polarized because populism describes a world divided between the righteous people and the corrupt elite. Now under the late Chavez's successor, Nicolas Maduro, the political system, after years of erosion, and it was under Chavez that it started to erode, has become a hybrid of democratic and authoritarian features. No, it's full-blown, the rich through government, which is a mafia, total totalitarian rule over the people. But never does the article identify what economic system could cause such disaster. It does mention specific policies, subsidies, welfare programs, money printing, inflation, and price controls. All of these things are anti-capitalist, free and open market. True free and open market. Bernie Sanders, ladies and gentlemen, loves Venezuela. He loves that model of government. And that's your guy, liberals. And quite frankly, I am thankful that Hillary and the Democratic establishment screwed him over, so that Hillary would run for president, because I am not sure if Trump would have beaten Bernie Sanders. I don't think so. His rallies were as big as Donald Trump's, and that really should trouble everyone. Because if Trump doesn't accomplish even a few of the things that he swore to do. And the big ones are that southern border wall, repealing in total Obamacare, and I'm going to get into a Rand Paul article that he wrote early this morning. And if he doesn't get us back into, we want pre-Obamacare healthcare system. Now, it's really, I'm going to rephrase that. It's health insurance. Health care and health insurance are two different entities. Health care is a right. Sure, a doctor under Hippocratic Oath should not turn you away because you can't pay him. But health insurance is something you have to buy. Or, well, you have to if you want to buffer yourself from economic collapse. More than 75% of bankruptcies are due to overwhelming medical costs. And most of those people had insurance also. So can you imagine having none? Having no, dare I say, safety net, which, with these rising healthcare costs, we're insuring ourselves into poverty. So if he doesn't take care of those two things especially, and the tax reform, that's a big one, which I think should have been first. But, that's just me. If he doesn't get those things done by 2020, and it's a shame that, quite frankly, two of those, I see the border wall would take longer to get funding and construct. I get it, no problem. But the tax reform and the repeal of Obamacare, which the GOP did last August anyway, total repeal, knowing that Obama would veto it. Now we have a Republican, so-called Republican president. Look, we don't have Hillary. That's important, right? Now all of a sudden we have to replace, which means the GOP put a repeal bill out there, passed in both houses to get our votes, knowing it would not go into law. And they want to keep their tentacles on the health insurance industry. That, friends, is socialism. The article continues, but nationalism is never mentioned. In particular, the Standard points out the article does not use the word socialism or socialist. It does not mention that Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro have headed the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Socialism is the cause that must not be named, like Lord Voldemort. That's my addition. So, it's refreshing to see a rather more forthright article in the Washington Post, of all places, that weekend by Mariana Zuniga and Nick Miroff. So here's a summarization of that. With cash running low and debts piling up, Venezuela's socialist government has cut back sharply on food imports. Venezuela's disaster is man-made, economists point out, the result of farm nationalizations. Does that sound familiar? Currency distortions and a government takeover of food distribution. While millions of Venezuelans can't get enough to eat, officials have refused to allow international aid groups to deliver food, accustomed to viewing their oil-rich country as the benefactor of poorer nations, not a charity case. It's not only the nationalization of the land, says Carlos Mercado, an expert on Venezuelan agriculture. The government has made the decision to be the producer, processor, and distributor, so the entire chain of food production suffers from an inefficient agricultural bureaucracy. Ladies and gentlemen, in America, just plug in the health insurance industry now, and it's the same thing. Competition is being destroyed, and monopolies under Obamacare are being created. less choice equals less quality product at higher prices. That's socialism. That's Venezuela with food, and that's America with health insurance. Now, it goes on to say, my colleague, the writer of this article, his colleague, Marian Tupy, notes that according to the Economic Freedom of the World Index, economic freedom in Venezuela fell from just 7 out of 10 in 1970 to barely above 3 in this present decade. Meanwhile, its gross domestic product per capita has fallen over 40 years, while Chile's has tripled. Venezuela doesn't have to be poor, but to restore its standard of living, it will have to reverse recent changes in property rights, judicial independence, free trade, and corruption. Property rights, folks. The United States of America was founded on property rights. Do you think that we are owners of our own property, like when America started out? I say no, we're not. So the second article comes from Infowars.com. I'm sure all of you know about the Road Warrior movie series. Well, we've got Road Warrior now in Venezuela for real. This comes from Zero Hedge, released earlier this morning. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the real Mad Max emerges. While Silicon Valley seems obsessed by blood boys, it's another part of the world that appears to have gone full Mad Max. There's a clip that followed this. A gang of bikers chase down and attack a truck with Molotov cocktails to steal its sugar payload. Not quite the gasoline or bullets that Fury Road offers, that's the latest Mad Max, but when all you have to eat is flamingos or black stallions, sugar may be a good substitute worth risking your life over. With each passing week, the situation in Venezuela keeps on getting worse. Not quite the socialist utopia that Bernie Sanders longed for. Or more pointedly, this is exactly the dystopia one can expect from such policies of redistribution and central planning. This is societal suicide. And part of this multiculturalism is bringing in people uneducated in a representative republic, not educated in true capitalism, not educated in true equal opportunity and free markets, not educated in smaller government, but in fact desperate for government aid, and they bring the same principles from their countries into America. And then you have the oblivious individuals in America, played by that first clip, that think socialism. I know there was a part of the Mark Dice video, but one that would have segued into these people love socialism and they love Bernie Sanders. So another part of multiculturalism is, of course, rising crime. And the lack of assimilation and by these people, and the lack of government responsibility. And this is going to open up into another clip where I think, and yes, pun intended, it was deplorable for President Donald Trump to ask certain questions. I found it insulting, and you'll see why. Mexican illegal immigrant who has been removed from the U.S. 7 times had drunk 12 beers and was driving at 100 miles an hour when he crashed his van and killed a father of 3. This comes from thedailymail.com. Nemias Garcia Velasco, age 32, was charged with motor vehicle homicide. He reportedly told officers he had 12 beers before getting behind the wheel. Prosecutors say he was going over 100 miles an hour when he lost control of the van. The crash killed Silvano Torres, 58 years old, who was riding in the cargo area of the van. Prosecutors said Garcia Velasco has been removed from the U.S. 7 times. So that's the government. That is the government not taking responsibility, not living up to the Constitution, not living up to the laws of the land, all in the name of multiculturalism. So this illegal immigrant, who we're supposed to call an undocumented worker, was removed from the United States. He lost control of his 2001 Dodge Ram. So you get the picture. This is what multiculturalism does, folks. This is societal suicide. So I want to get into this clip. It's going to show the difference also between what's going on in Hamburg, Germany, which I talked about last week. Probably the biggest crime-riddled city in all of Germany, who've embraced, this Muslim invasion for multiculturalism. And then you're going to see, how Donald Trump was received in Poland, who I've talked about is resisting this Muslim invasion, resisting the European Union's demands for them to take in refugees, and Poland is flourishing. So let's go to clip 2.
The fundamental question of our time is whether the West has the will to survive. Do we have the confidence in our values to defend them at any cost? Do we have enough respect for our citizens to protect our borders? Do we have the desire and the courage to preserve our civilization in the face of those who would subvert and destroy it?
Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For
I found those questions to be rather insulting. We, the people of the United States of America, by electing Donald Trump, showed we indeed have the will to want our countries to flourish and our culture to thrive. The British people proved that with Brexit. Excuse me for the cough. Poland proved that by electing a true conservative nationalist government which is fighting the European Union to protect its citizens. The people of the United States showed their will. It's insulting that Donald Trump asked such a question. What he should be asking is, does he himself, as CEO of the United States of America, does he have the integrity enough? Does he have the honesty enough? Does he have enough morals to fulfill our demands for America to be restored to what it's supposed to be? That's what he should be asking. And he should be asking, does he have the testicular fortitude to challenge the establishment and make it happen? And if he has to use executive fiat, so be it. I said 2 years ago, the next incoming president, whoever it was, that truly wanted to fight the establishment would basically have to do it alone. He'd have to do it alone through executive order and perhaps even military takeover of the government and suspend the Congress. Yeah, I know that's drastic, but you know what? And I'm going to get into Rand Paul's article after this clip. That seems, folks, to be the reality. So for Donald Trump to ask, does the West have the will? No. Do you political leaders have the integrity? And so far, what I'm seeing in Western Europe, the answer is no. So I really thought that was extremely insulting, extremely gratuitous. And when he makes speeches like that, that kind of makes my blood boil a little bit. Because you, Donald Trump, are insulting my intelligence and the intelligence of my audience. We proved that we have the will. And many Europeans are proving it too. Do you have the will to do what's right?
Many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see and have not seen it. To hear what you hear and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
Police and protesters taking over the streets of Hamburg tonight. A sea of marchers pushing up against police lines. The face-off leading to violent clashes just as world leaders arrived in town.
And this is what President Trump will see when he arrives here on the streets of Hamburg. Police in the streets, here in armored cars, protesters all over.
Some throwing bottles at German police in riot gear, officers trying to disperse the crowds, tackling people to the ground, kicking others, finally turning water cannons on them, the streets covered in a cloud of tear gas. So far, police say at least 59 officers injured. The marchers protesting globalization and capitalism, many of them in black masks, but also in...
See, this is where the Germans fall short. Globalism and capitalism, pure equal opportunity capitalism, are polar opposites. So either the German people have it wrong or this lady that's speaking has it wrong. What they're really fighting is globalism and corporate government collusion.
In that crowd, images of America's leader. That G20 summit underway just about 2 miles from the clashes. President Trump meeting with Germany's Angela Merkel, the two leaders chatting and shaking hands. A warmer encounter than their first awkward meeting in the Oval Office just a few months ago.
Thank you.
Earlier in the day in Poland, a very different scene.
Take a look at these streets here in downtown Warsaw, packed full of people waiting to see President Trump.
President Trump supporters showing up in droves. In the heart of Warsaw, at the site of Poland's uprising against the Nazis, the president delivering an ominous warning, presenting a clash of civilizations between the West and what he called radical Islamic terrorism.
The fundamental question of our time is whether the West has the will to survive. Do we have the confidence in our values to defend them at any cost? Do we have enough respect for our citizens to protect our borders? Do we have the desire and the courage to preserve our civilization in the face of those who would subvert and destroy it?
Donald Trump, I say this to you. If the world leaders continue to fail its people, I think at some point, I don't know when, I mean, maybe we haven't hit critical mass yet. I don't know. Human beings tend to be more reactive than proactive. So maybe we just have to get to that point where we feel like we have nothing left to lose. I don't think I don't think that world leaders truly want to test the will of the people to the brink, because I think, President Trump, you and everyone else will find out. That'll be the litmus test. We'll find out exactly how strong the will of the people is, and you might not want to. So, if he truly cares, we know the Polish government cares about their people. That's why he had a totally different reception. He first went into a country absolutely torn to shreds through globalism and multiculturalism, as opposed to warmly welcomed by a people who have embraced and fought for the right way nationalism and their unified culture. Night and day, ladies and gentlemen.
But tonight in Hamburg, protesters delivering a message of their own to the leaders of the world's most powerful countries. You are not welcome here.
Tonight, powerful storms racing east. Intense rain snarling New York's morning commute. Roadways flooded from New Jersey to Massachusetts. Some shut down.
Now, I'm not sure how this was relevant to the clip. So, I apologize for this part. But it is brief, and then the clip will continue on to more relevant issues, at least germane to this topic.
As the squall line moved through.
It sounded like a jet plane was just parked on my deck. It was so loud.
Gusts above 90 miles per hour in parts of West Michigan. A security camera catching a flying trampoline landing on a car. In Grand Haven, a 72-year-old man killed when a tree crashed onto a home. Those storms knocking out power for 140,000.
They've driven the extremists out. And yesterday, Iraqi soldiers celebrated an end to the bloody struggle for Mosul. This victory always seemed inevitable. A few thousand ISIS fighters pitted against tens of thousands of Iraqi troops and the full force of the US coalition. But it took 9 months because ISIS fought to the death. Even in the last days of the battle, civilians were forced to run the gauntlet of the extremist snipers and suicide bombers. The Mosul offensive began in October, in farmland on the outskirts of the city.
These Kurdish fighters are trying to move in that direction and retake the main road to Mosul.
Then in Christian towns long deserted by residents where ISIS had desecrated churches. Finally, Iraqi forces forged into the heart of the city, fighting street to street, laying waste to Mosul in order to reclaim it. But as ISIS faced defeat in Mosul, attention had already shifted to Raqqa, the so-called ISIS capital across the border in Syria, where US-backed forces now have the extremists surrounded. We made it into Raqqa 2 weeks ago and walked through eerie neighborhoods, silent except for gunfire. Another city brought to its knees by ISIS and its cult of death and destruction.
This is what it's like when fast-moving
satanic cult.
Highway. Residents had little time to react as a wildfire near Santa Barbara quickly grew to thousands of acres.
Don't worry.
Strong winds fueled the Whittier fire, forcing hundreds to evacuate, including nearly 90 children attending summer camp. Everyone got out safely, but at least 20 structures have been destroyed. A much larger fire continues to burn just to the north, where the Alamo fire has now scorched more than 20,000 acres. Fire Captain Dave Zanaboni.
We thought we had a pretty good line on it, but the winds picked up. We had a pretty strong northeasterly wind. It jumped that retardant line.
Ranch owner Gretchen Leaf had to quickly pack up and evacuate.
Appeared to be okay, and then we looked up and there was this big black cloud.
That's also what residents face north of Sacramento.
I just can't even believe what I'm seeing.
Over 4,000 acres have burned in the wildfire.
The wind was shifting bad last night. It was going one way and the other. And so those poor firefighters, they've had their hands full.
At least 10 buildings have burned to the ground with no containment in sight. In Los Angeles, record-setting temperatures are being blamed for another major fire, a transformer that exploded, knocking out power to 140,000 customers.
Clashes have broken out in the capital Caracas after a peaceful rally to mark 100 days of protest against President Nicolas Maduro's socialist government, which the opposition blames for political repression and economic misery. While National Guard troops fired tear gas at about 150 protesters were throwing bottles and rocks and taking up positions behind makeshift shields. Many of the protests have ended in clashes between masked youths and the security forces. The opposition leaders have been gaining more support, galvanized by the surprise release of a hardline leader, Leopoldo Lopez. More than 90 people have been killed, hundreds arrested, and thousands injured since the unrest began at the start of April.
Heavy downpours have hit Jiangda County in China's Tibet Autonomous Region. Water levels have exceeded the banks in some rivers. One residential building on the edge of a river collapsed. It's still unknown whether there are people trapped inside. Authorities are taking precautions in the face of continuing rain. Many residents have been evacuated to safety.
Shortly after midnight, 4th of July fireworks were still exploding in the Bronx sky when a gunshot rang out, and a distraught NYPD officer made a desperate call for help.
Get a blood bank going. Get me a route. Get me everything. Units overseas 180-30 Mars. Shots fired.
48-year-old Miasotis Familia, a 12-year NYPD veteran and mother of 3, was sitting in an NYPD mobile unit when she was ambushed. Familia was fatally shot in the head. NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill.
It is clear this was an unprovoked attack on police.
I guess that the fire stuff and then this is basically a recap of major world events of the last 5 days. Now, I guess those things, the natural disasters and I guess this particular crime also being thrown in, just for me, it shows the decay of society for many, many factors. But I guess also this gets a little apocalyptic. So there's another minute and a half, but I'm going to let it go. I want to finish up with more multiculturalist insanity. Now, this is coming from Canada, courtesy of GodfatherPolitics.com. Kelly Sharp wrote this article yesterday. And here's the title, folks. Canadian Christian landlord slapped with $12,000 Sharia fine. Now, what does him being a Christian and a landlord have to do with anything? I asked the question, if he was Jewish, if he was an atheist, if he was a Buddhist or a pagan, would he have been fined? Are they fining him as a landlord who allegedly, and you're going to just be outraged, and I'm going to post this separately on Facebook later on today. You would be outraged, and you will be outraged when you hear the reason. But was he fined as a Christian, or was he fined as a landlord? So here comes this article, and I know most of you are going to pick up on the freaking irony of this. And, you know, this is Canada. I don't know what his appeal rights are. I don't know if he can appeal. I would hate to see this done in America, and we better be careful. And my prediction for this to happen, if it happens here in America, and I'm assuming it hasn't yet, I'm going to assume the most vulnerable areas are Minnesota, Michigan, and I am going to say Texas, and here's why. When it comes to personal liberties, and this is a personal liberty issue, absolutely it is, Texas ranks number 47. third to last. Yes, it's true. Third to last in personal liberty. So that's my wild card. Is Texas, most predictably, I call it Muslim soda or Islam Michigan. So here's what happened. Canadians are known for how nice they are. In fact, it is often a humor at about how far they go not to offend others. No, they're doormats, actually. Now we know why. They are afraid of the punishments if they ever do upset someone. A 53-year-old Christian landlord in Toronto, Canada, has been slapped, with a $12,000 Sharia fine. Get this. For not taking off his shoes when he entered one of his Muslim tenants' apartment. John Alibi has been ordered by the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal to pay a fine of $12,000 for failing to remove his shoes when he walked into the rental home. The landlord was only there because the Muslim couple was moving out and required a 24-hour notice if he was planning to show the apartment to another possible tenant. So he just came by to let them know. Here's the kicker. Now he's being fined for religious discrimination. Now I ask you, who's doing the racial discrimination here? It doesn't say in this article that the landlord came in, did the sign of the cross, and then desecrated these people's homes. He simply walked in, not as a Christian, but as a landlord, and said, hey, I'm giving you 24-hour notice. I'm showing the apartment to new prospective tenants. That's it. And then this Muslim couple seized the opportunity, I guess complained to a human rights tribunal. That's funny. Human rights tribunal. And is being awarded 12,000. Well, I don't know if the Muslim couple is getting 12 G's or the Canadian government is getting 12 G's. Not so clear. And I don't have time to read the rest of the article. But that's unbelievable. Where is this landlord's human rights? Where are his... this isn't a question of religion. He just walked in and said, hey, I'm giving you 24-hour notice. He didn't walk in with a Bible in his hand preaching the gospel. He walked in as a secular landlord doing his due diligence. And he's being fined $12,000 because he didn't take his shoes off and bow down to the satanic prophet Muhammad. You know what? They can kiss my ass. We must be vigilant, ladies and gentlemen. We must be aware. To be apathetic, to be ignorant, and to be soft on these atrocities will only serve our demise. So I say to you, be outraged. Tweet your president what you like about what he's doing and what you don't like about what he's doing. Don't be a blind follower and don't be disengaged. Evil triumphs when good men and women do nothing. My name is Michael B. This is the Truth Zone. See you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central.